If you are also currently looking to make the switch to OLED screens and/or are considering the LG C2, hopefully with me sharing my 3 months experience with the 42-inch model today can give you an idea of what it's like if you do decide to pick one up. In today's video, I'll be doing a quick unboxing followed by going over what I feel are the advantages of switching over to an OLED panel over VA and IPS panels for gaming, and also share my experience of what it's like to use this large 42-inch TV as my PC monitor. I won't be going over every single feature and function of the C2 as there's just too many, but I'll cover those that I think will enhance your experience as a gamer, and then finally share my opinion of whether or not the LG C2 could be considered a king-tiered or your endgame gaming monitor for the next couple of years. So hit that subscribe button and enable notifications if you're new to this channel, and let's find out if this OLED panel's gaming performance is worth spending $1,300 on. While unboxing and assembling the 42-inch size, I find that it is just the right size to go at it alone. But given how thin the panel is, it was a little unnerving when taking it out of the box. Inside, you'll find the OLED screen, 2 very plasticky feet, which would be nicer if it was metal considering the price, a magic remote, a cover for the input ports, some cable management tools, and some manuals. Assembling the LG C2 was very straightforward as you just pop in the feet, screw them into place, and you're pretty much done. Putting the screen onto my table, the first thing that I noticed was that this 42-inch takes up a lot less table space compared to my previous 49-inch super ultra wide due to the screen being flat. And compared to when I tried putting a 48-inch TV on my table, it was a lot more practical and easily viewable from where I normally sit. To give you an idea, my table is 25.6 inches deep, and from where I usually sit, it is approximately 32 inches away from the screen. From this distance, I can easily see the edges of the screen without needing to turn my head a lot, and this resulted in a lot less neck and shoulder strain than when I was trying to simulate what it would be like to use a 48-inch screen with another TV, which was also the reason why I ended up not getting the C1 in the first place, as it was just too big for me. But being a TV, there's no swivel, height, or tilt adjustments. And even though the screen is already tall enough to be in my field of view, from my experience, mounting the LG C2 on a monitor arm via a VESA adapter or raising the screen by another 10 centimeters resulted in the ideal viewing experience. Turning on the screen and loading up the game for the first time, I immediately noticed how much clearer and sharper everything was compared to other panel types I've used in the past. So let's see what noticeable benefits you'll be getting when going for an OLED panel for gaming. Compared to VA and IPS panels, the deeper contrast from each individual pixel being able to turn off completely results in deeper contrast and overall resulting in a better perceived brightness and image quality in games almost immediately. This effect is made even more clear when you turn on HDR for games in a dark room, as there will be no blooming around bright edges of images or light bleeding from the side of the screen. Even the best VA and IPS panels with full array dimming sometimes will still have the blooming effect. However, talking about HDR, one of the drawbacks of OLED, in particular with the 42 and the 48-inch C2, is that they're not as bright as VA in sustained peak brightness. The LG C2 42-inch has a sustained full screen peak brightness of only 160 nits for HDR content according to ratings.com. But honestly speaking, it is more than enough than my eyes can handle. The only time the brightness will feel a bit lacking is when gaming during the noontime, when my room is really bright and there's just too much reflection to see properly in dark scenes. But as I'm almost always working during the day, it isn't really a big factor for me. Generally speaking, if you mostly game in a dark room or with not many lights on, the peak brightness of the LG C2 should be more than enough for you without burning out your retinas. Aside from the brightness drawback, I personally find the LG C2's OLED panel to excel in all other areas such as pixel refresh speed, input latency, color accuracy, and excellent viewing angles. Being a high refresh rate OLED panel, the pixel refresh speed or response time of the LG C2 is less than 1 millisecond. Unlike VA or IPS panels that usually rely on pixel overdrive or backlight strobing to reduce ghosting, the LG C2's panel is really fast and is what I will consider a true 1 millisecond pixel response time. VA and IPS manufacturers usually advertise 1 millisecond gray-to-gray pixel response times, while their true pixel response time is not even close. and most of the times, it is at the expense of sacrificing your screen's brightness or introducing inverse ghosting with pixel overdrive. But with OLED, it is very unlikely that you will experience any ghosting or image smearing, so the moving images that you're getting will appear very clean and clear. And with this true 1 millisecond response time, you will also be getting a really low input latency with the LG C2 no matter the refresh rate. LG has even included a low input lag mode if you want to make sure that you are getting near instant input feedback at 0.7 milliseconds, so that's definitely a bonus. Couple this with 120Hz refresh rate, G-Sync and FreeSync compatibility, and variable refresh rates when you game on the PS5 and Xbox. This screen here has given me one of the smoothest gaming experience I've ever had. But if you are a very competitive gamer and need more than 120Hz refresh rate, a VA panel will still be the faster choice, or you could wait for the 240Hz 49-inch OLED screen from LG. As for the color accuracy and viewing angles, OLED panels can offer a very similar performance in these areas as an IPS panel, with a difference in the previously mentioned response times. So in case you also need to get some professional work done, the LG C2 has a 100% sRGB coverage, 88% Adobe RGB coverage, color accuracy with a delta E of 1.54, and a wide color gamut of DCI-P3 of 96.6 for HDR content when switching over to the ISF Expert mode. But in general, I don't recommend using this screen for productivity, but more on that later in the next section. Now, as for what it was like using the 42-inch LG C2 as my primary display for PC for the past 3 months, in terms of gaming, with the 4K resolution and high pixel density of 106 pixels per inch, everything looks so much sharper, larger, and leaks prettier than before. The upgrade in visual fidelity was something I've wanted for a very long time. I personally find that open world and action games benefited the most with the HDR enabled on an OLED screen, as the upgrade in contrast made everything look so much better. Colors of in-game worlds are more vibrant and appear to pop out more. Contrast in dark scenes look so much better with the deep blacks. And the super fast pixel response times with the G-Sync and FreeSync compatibility resulted in almost no motion blur and generally a super smooth experience. And the best part is, it's not only made for just PC games running in 4K, as the LG C2 also supports VRR on the latest consoles such as the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. There will be less screen tearing when you run games in 4K on those consoles. But unfortunately, when it comes to playing games in 1080p, such as when I boot up the Nintendo Switch and the PS3 on the LG C2, only the colors appear more vibrant when compared to using a VA panel. But the general gaming experience at 60Hz is indifferent, so this OLED looks best when it's displaying 4K content. And also because I'm coming from a super ultra wide screen, whenever I miss having a wider field of view in games or productivity tasks, the LG C2 also comes with the option to change the display's aspect ratio. I could switch over to the 21:9 ratio and use the C2 like a 34-inch ultra wide screen for more immersion. Though it would be nice if I could use the unused space for other inputs. And talking about inputs, unlike monitors which usually don't have more than 3 input ports, the LG C2 has 4 HDMI 2.1 ports that can all support 4K 120Hz with 10-bit colors, which is very useful for hooking up all my consoles without needing a switcher. And because there's also an eARC port, I could conveniently direct all audio to the Katana V2 soundbar without needing to run separate cables from each console. And even though there are 2 USB-A ports on the LG C2, there's no KVM functionality here like you would normally find on high-end monitors. But it does have 2 useful features that I really like about the LG C2. When you switch sources, the screen remembers your picture settings for that source and will automatically switch picture settings accordingly. The other is that the built-in game optimizer menu will show you your current FPS and picture settings and allow you to change the black levels for different type of games easily, which is neat. I also want to point out here that even though the LG C2 supports picture-in-picture and picture-by-picture mode, I found that you are not able to select 2 different HDMI sources at the same time. You can only choose one HDMI input while opening a very limited selection of TV apps such as AirPlay or vice versa. But maybe someday LG can enable this feature with a firmware update and it will make doing productivity tasks on the screen more productive. Now, talking about productivity, personally, it's not as great as using an ultra-wide due to the 16:9 ratio, but because of the high PPI density on a 42-inch size, texts are sharp and clear unlike what many are saying. And Regarding the dreaded built-in auto-dimming feature to prevent burn-ins, it's not as aggressive as it was on the LG C1. The dimming is now progressive, and half the time, while working on documents and spreadsheets, I don't really notice the dimming until it has already dropped all the way to 50%. But the reason that I don't recommend the LG C2 for productivity isn't because of the aspect ratio or the auto-dimming. Instead, it's the little paranoid voice that's in my head that tells me that my screen is gonna get burnt in from the constant static contents that's on the screen, and that disrupts my working rhythm. It is not just with the LG C2, but with all OLED panels, there's this risk, and which also happens to be my #1 complaint of OLED panels. But hopefully with some preventative steps like lowering the brightness and turning on self-care options, the screen should go a long way before experiencing any burn-ins. We'll see. And as for other more generic potential downsides of getting the LG C2, it is that you will need a more powerful modern GPU that can drive 4K gaming resolutions and has a HDMI 2.1 output port in order to fully utilize this OLED panel. The power consumption of the LG C2 is also higher than your typical desktop monitor and TV, so that's something that you should also keep in mind as well. So, having gone through what the LG C2 is capable of, I personally think that the LG C2 can be your endgame monitor if you mainly plan to use it for gaming and content consuming, as this OLED screen was designed to make these type of contents look extremely great. I mean, LG designed the C2 with specifications and features so similar to a gaming desktop monitor. If only they included a DisplayPort input, it would be the perfect OLED monitor for now, and put up a good fight against Asus ROG G42UQ OLED monitor. However, being a natural downside of OLED panels, if you also need it for a lot of productivity use, then getting a good VA or IPS with full array dimming will be a better choice, as you won't need to be constantly dealing with that paranoid voice in your head telling you about burn-ins and still getting content that looks almost as good as OLEDs. But with how far OLED technology has improved and prices now becoming slightly more affordable, I'm pretty sure that soon we'll start seeing even brighter OLED panels that are more resistant to burn-ins, such as the Asus OLED panel that I just mentioned, and the recently released but significantly more expensive 34-inch QD OLED from Alienware. What do you guys think? Could this be your ideal endgame gaming monitor? Let me know in the comments. Alright, thank you guys as always for watching. If you have any questions about the LG C2, feel free to leave them in the comments below or come ask them on my Discord server. If you enjoyed today's video and found it helpful, please hit that like button or share this video with a friend, as it will help this channel a lot more than you know it, and I'll see you again in the next video. Ciao!